Shalom. Baruch Haba, Korim Lee Anthony. Hello and welcome. They call me Anthony. Thank you so much for joining us here at Sarid for our weekly Torah teaching on the coming of Adonai Yahushua HaMashiach. If I could take a minute, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and esteem to Yahuwah Elohim for the great wisdom and understanding He has given us to share with you in His Word. To the Kodashim out there, I want to thank you so much for your comments and for your support. I encourage you to hold fast to the things that the word of Yahuwah is revealing in the lines. Hear Yahuwah Elohim as we continue to deal with the council of Yisrael, as the Kohen Hagadol is being anointed for the high places here in the story. No coincidence. There is a change of leadership going on in its early stages of Yisrael here in our time. This one also has its roots in Mitsrayim, as the peace treaty made by them are showing signs of collapsing as the days of Mitsrayim continue. Atimakanim, if you're ready, that's Bonaki. Let's go. The Midbar will begin in the wilderness in chapter 18, verse 23, followed by the Adut in Devarim, chapter 28, verse 67, and the witness over in Yochanan, chapter 11. We'll be looking at verses 56 and 57. But the Leviyi shall perform the work of the Echel of meeting, and they shall bear their iniquity. In the morning you shall say, oh, that it were evening. Then they sought Yahushua and spoke among themselves as they stood in the Mishkan. But the Leviyi shall perform the work of the Echel of meetings. We begin here. The mark of the accusative is on the work. At Abudah, it is the work needed to establish everlasting life for the people. Chayim Olam. These are the hired killers, contracted to do the work that is necessary to achieve that goal. These are they down in Yochanan that sought Yahushua. He's needed for that work. They sought him. The Greek word zeteo, means to seek after in order to find out, by thinking, meditating, and reasoning, to inquire into and demand something from someone. So this is questioning the people to ascertain where he might be. So they're out to get it. What they spoke among themselves as they stood in the Mishkan, hoping to apprehend him, is seen in Devarim. In the morning you shall say. Boker, H. 1242, is the beginning of day, sunrise. The verb means to seek and look for, to inquire and reflect on. So they're starting early here with the planning. In the morning you shall say, oh, that it were evening. The word for evening here is Erev. H. 6153 is sunset. It's growing dark. The word is used through the idea of covering with a texture. H. 6148 is referring to the word Arab. It means to exchange pledges, to have fellowship with, to share pledges and become surety. So they took pledges to get this work done all day and into the evening. This is what they spoke among themselves as they stood in the Mishkan. This is the meeting place, the Echel of meeting. It is clear and shining down below in Yochanan. The verb of Echel means to be clear and shining. So it's the Mishkan. They came there to take oaths to get this done. They wanted to make a few things clear. So they're praying about this. This is another way that they sought him. They took oaths in the presence of Elohim to slay an innocent man. This is seen as bearing iniquity. They shall bear. This word for bear is nasa, and it means to lift up, exalt, support, aid, and assist. Iniquity, to desire and long after iniquity. These are the Gentiles speaking below in Yochanan. They shall bear their iniquity. These are going to be the ones who fill in for the original people to execute this judgment. The original ones are the ones Moshe is speaking to in Devarim for the Adut. The Gentiles shall bear their iniquity. They're going to fill this part up. H5771 is a won. Is a won. It is perversity, depravity, iniquity, guilt or punishment of iniquity. This is the condition of their heart that is coming into play here. The verb means to be bent, bowed down, be twisted, be perverted, and to do wrong and pervert. The ones who have joined themselves to performing this work are the ones speaking in the verse below. The perversity of what they are doing was in the Mishkan that was still standing at that time. So these are extremists. They shall bear their iniquity. Yahuwah is allowing someone else to do this part for them, so that the true people will not have a hand in their own destruction. It's talking about two different people here in this verse. They shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a kukwa forever throughout your generations. And at evening you shall say, oh, that it were morning. What do you think? That he will not come to the festival? It shall be, ahaya, it shall be as a kukwa. H2708 is an enactment, something prescribed. The third definition describes an action prescribed for oneself to resolve. The verb means to cut in, to govern. So this is not a regular part of the enactment of the Pesach that they're doing here. The Pesach is seen as the festival, or the enactment is seen as the festival down in Yochanan, which we know is the Pesach. They have taken matters into their own hands to continue to bear their iniquity. From the lines above, it shall be a kukwa forever in your generations. Here, this word for dower, for generations is dower. H1755 is a generation of those living during a period of time. The verb means to heap up. And this is seen as the witness continues in Devarim, and at evening you shall say, oh, that it were morning. Day and night, it's heaped up together. The deeds they plan to do because of the iniquity is planned at night. It's planned at night, in the evening, sunset, Arab. The verb Arab means to grow dark, to do at evening, is in the definition. This is the pledge they took. The root word is used through the idea of covering with a texture. And this is H6148. Arab, it means to exchange pledges. See, some Arabs. To have fellowship with, to share pledges and become surety. And knowing the story, this was the case. They eventually took him at night. In that evening you shall say, oh, that it were morning. Here the word boker is used again. H1242, the beginning of day, sunrise. The verb means to seek and look for, to inquire and reflect upon. So they're going to take him at night and question him the next morning. Make inquiries. And this too was the case in the story. So all of this is still more prophecy about to come to pass. As Yahuwah declares in Bamidbar, and it shall be. Yahuwah said it was going to be a kukwa, one of the kukim, the civil enactments written in the Torah for the people to do, already noted below as the festival of Pesach. Okay, so this is a prophecy of what they were thinking down below in Yochanan. What do you think? That he will not come to the festival? Of course, if he doesn't, that will spoil all of their plans. That among Bnei Yisrael, they shall have no inheritance. Because of the fear which terrifies your heart, and because of the sight which your eyes see. Now both the Kohen Hagadol, both the chief Kohanim and the Parshi had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, that they might seize him. Okay? That among Bnei Yisrael, they shall have no inheritance. Once again, they here are the Gentiles, the ones that top line of survey is relating to, where it says they shall bear their iniquity. And the reason why they begin to bear this iniquity is because of what is spoken in Devarim. That says, because of the fear which terrifies your heart. It was out of fear. This fear was still in the heart of the people Moshe is speaking to over in Devarim. It was because of the leadership that Yahuwah used to speak to the people when he set up the council of the Kahuna through Moshe and Aharon. When they spoke, people followed out of fear of the consequences from Yahuwah if they did not follow the command. They saw the consequences in Mitsrayim and in the wilderness. The adut was being given. It terrified their heart. All of this is seen down in Yochanan when it says, now both the chief Kohanim and the Parshi had given a command. And because of the sight which your eyes see, this is the rest of the sentence down below. That if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, that they might seize him. They were looking for him, by sight which your eyes see. Bamidbar chapter 18, verse 24 will line up with Devarim chapter 28, 68, followed by the witness over in Yochanan chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. For the tenth of Bnei Yisrael, which they offer up as a teruma to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah will bring you back to Mitsrayim in ships. Then 6 days before the Pesach, Yahushua came to Bethany where Elazar was, who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. Okay. For the 10th, Esser, et Maaser, the mark of the accusative is on the 10th here, Esser. This word identifies with richness, means to enrich or gain riches of Bnei Yisrael. All who believe Elohim will prevail and thus build upon that richness that leads to Chaim Olam, everlasting life. The verse down below in Yochanan embodies that richness. It speaks of life everlasting, which they offer up as a teruma to Yahuwah. The word teruma is H8641. Any offering to Yahuwah or contribution lifted up and set on high to be exalted in praise. Yahuwah is notably recognized in the accounts of both of those extraordinary events seen below in Yochanan as the Pesach and Bethany, where Elazar, who had been dead, whom Yahushua had raised from the dead, both of these were supernatural events that are set apart as some of the greatest stories ever told, giving praise to Yahuwah. Okay? So, Bnei Yisrael is gathered together to celebrate that and lift up a teruma to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah declares, the witness declares, Yahuwah will bring you back. So this is a recount of that greatness. Back to Mitsrayim means double straits, siege works, the place of enclosures. The verb means to confine, to shut in, and to delineate. This is the Pesach and Bethany down below in Yochanan. The Pesach is when the lamb is to be eaten during the evening of the 14th day of the first month, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. This is to be done in the house, confined place, as a remembrance of Yahuwah passing over Bnei Yisrael and causing the death of the firstborn to fall upon all the Mitsrayim. Yahushua is that lamb, having no sin yet made to suffer. He is identified down below in the verse. Bethany means the house of misery, another confined place here. This is the place where Yahushua performed the miracle with Elazar, who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. So all of this brings praise to Yahuwah. Together, they were places of double straits, Mitsrayim, shut up, and places of confinement, delineated. Take you back to Mitsrayim in ships. That's what he did. Oniyah H591 means ships. It means men of ships. The verb is used in the sense of conveyance. It means to allow, to meet, and cause to meet, to encounter. You see the encounter down below in Yochanan. Yahushua came. Conveyance is the action or process of transporting someone or something from one place to another. Yahushua came to Bethany 6 days before the Pesach. Conveyance. The root word of Onyah, the word for ship, is identical with H578 through the idea of contraction in anguish, meaning to mourn. Okay? Death and mourning is a theme in both of those accounts, awe-inspiring, the Pesach and that place, Bethany. Thus, the ship is seen as the memory of those things. It is a vessel that takes us back, okay, to those times of great loss and expectation where we lift up praise to Yahuwah, a teruma, when death is near. The death of the firstborn affected every household in Mitsrayim. It was the greatest cry of all. People were hurt. Death brings you to tears. You cry out. You hear the echo at all the grave sites. One day will rise again. Okay? So they are gathered together to lift up a teruma to Yahuwah. All right? And something else we are to remember here is the adversary found in this footnote and the double straights that they now remind us of. The word has already checked them one time for the same stuff they're pulling here now. Double straights again. So here's the footnote. Put it on the screen. NU text omits who had been dead. You know, this is the same stuff they tried to pull in chapter 11 when all this started. Where the NU omitted from the place where the dead man was lying. You know, they omitted it then, and here Yahuwah is taking us back to those days of Mitsrayim. You know, they begin to do the same thing. Here they omit who had been dead. You know, so I repeat, nothing gets done without the dead man. You know, Elazar had to be dead so that he can be raised from the dead. This is the power behind the story. Without Elazar, who had been dead, the story is viewed as just helping Elazar out of a ditch or something. He wasn't really dead. You know, where's the praise to Yahuwah in that? See, this is the way the enemy views Elazar, who had been dead, you know, as though he had not really been dead. That's what the insinuation is. He wasn't really dead. In fact, according to this account, he was alive and still living now, you know, after he had been dead. And Yahushua came by to see him because Elohim truly prevailed through him in raising up Elazar, who had been dead. And because of Yahushua raising him from the dead, you know, so they're celebrating, lifting up praise to Yahuwah. I have given to the Leviim as an inheritance, by the way of which I said to you, you shall never see it again. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Elazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. I have given to the Leviim those who are joined to. This is seen as the people who have joined themselves to him down in Yochanan, who is Yahushua at the table. They joined themselves to him to do the duties of service to him, the Kohen Haggadah, in the praise of Yahuwah. Okay, in fact, Martha served because they had just paid him a supper. And there were others that joined to him as well, because it declares Elazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. So there were others. So this story is viewed in Devarim as, by the way of which I said to you, you shall never see it again. This is another way of viewing that first time in Mitsrayim. That first time is not going to be repeated. As it says, you shall never see it again. But a likeness of it according to the word. Double straights by every account of the definition, Mitsrayim. Yahuwah is giving the teaching to Moshe, and I'm showing you here this as a witness to those things written for the people, so that you might believe that Yahushua and those joined with him saw this way. They saw this way. Derek, H. 1870, is a journey or manner of direction. You know, it's figuratively used of a course of life in moral character. They saw their firstborn from the grave come back to life. Death did not affect them in Mitsrayim when it first happened, and this is another way of seeing it. They saw it and lived it as an inheritance. So as we look at the line there, it is an inheritance. H5159 is Nachalah. Nachalah is a portion of something. The verb means to be allotted, be made, to possess, to get as a possession. It is figuratively used of acquiring testimonies. That's what I'm giving you here now, according to the word. This is the 10th. Therefore I have said to them, among Bnei Yisrael, they shall have no inheritance. And there you shall be offered for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. Then Miriam took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Yahushua, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Therefore I have said to them, these are the ones down below in Yochanan that Yahuwah is pointing out, because these are the Levayim joined to righteousness, and not hired killers from the earlier frames belonging to the Goyim. Both Miriam and Yahushua's names are traced back to Ibrit origin here in the verses. In fact, they were among the people who actually came out of Mitsrayim, their names. Yahushua was there by name to hear the words of Moshe, when he said in Devarim, and there you shall be offered for sale. That word, H4376, makar, it means to sell. This is the pound of costly oil of spikenard used to anoint the feet of Yahushua. Makar means to be given over to death, to your enemies. As we continue to survey in Devarim, the enemies are, according to Yahuwah in Bamidbar, as Bnei Yisrael. Among Bnei Yisrael. Oyebecha means personal and national enemies. These are, as it reads in the top line of Bamidbar, among Bnei Yisrael. As I said, and there you shall be offered for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves. So let's look at the male first here. That word for male slave, abed, is H5650. It is a manservant. So this is Yahushua. And he identifies with all the definitions used there for abed. A servant of Yisrael in the special sense of a Nabi or Liwayi. A form of address between equals as servants and a worshiper of Elohim. A subject. So this is Yahushua. He's the only male servant identified and the subject of this story. Now let's look at the female. H8198, Shebcha, is a maid servant as belonging to a mistress. The mistress was Martha, who's not here in this setting. She's Aramaic, and when you go and look at it in the box, the root word etymology box identifies her as a mistress. This is a woman in a position of authority or control. That's why she was identified as a mistress. Miriam was her maid servant. The word shipka is used of humility in speaking and addressing. She is on display below as she humbles herself as the female slave in the verse to anoint the feet of Yahushua. and wiped his feet with her hair. She anointed the feet because it says, they shall have no inheritance. Yahuwah is their portion. Yahushua and those who follow him have the spiritual land of possession and not earthly. So Devarim declares, but no one shall buy you. Chana. Chana means to get, acquire, or obtain. It is used of Yahuwah Elohim originating, creating, and redeeming his people. This is something that money cannot buy because it's not about money or anything earthly. Yahushua must possess those spiritual things before any earthly victory can be won for salvation. Okay, for us, they're being used here to fulfill the duties of the Mitsrayim in the high places. And this is seen as spiritual, as Yochanan records, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. The oil was myrrh. The Greek word identifies it as of Hebrew origin. Okay? It was strong and expensive. The fragrance of something is the spiritual aspect of it. Since smelling is something that cannot be seen, this is the hidden inheritance from the line above. Among Bnei Israel, they shall have no inheritance. Bnei Israel was given earthly land. The 12 tribes among them were given land by allotment and outlined when it was given. The Kohen Hagadol and the Levayim were given cities within each of the tribes' lot and common land for food, so that the presence of Yahuwah would be among the people to do the things that make for salvation for the nation of Israel and those who joined them from the Go'i. Yahushua was going to fulfill something that money cannot buy. The cost of the oil was insignificant. It was the fragrance that is identified. The house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. You know, this is symbolic of something more going on. This was their inheritance, the right to proclaim the Malkut, the kingdom of Yahuwah Elohim. Theirs was not earthly like the tribes. They get the invisible inheritance. They're going to be the ones who judge Bnei Israel when all is said and done. The Midbar chapter 18, verse 25 and 26 will line up with Devarim chapter 29, 1 and Yochanan chapter 12. Be looking at the witness, verse 4 and 5. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak thus to the Levayim, and say to them, These are the words of the Berit, which Yahuwah commanded Moshe to make with Bnei Israel in the land of Moab. But one of his Lamudim, Yehuda Ashkiah, Shimon's ben, who would betray him. Okay. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe. Okay, this begins a line of continuance by Yahuwah from the wilderness in the Midbar that carries as a reminder in the Adut of Devarim of something to be remembered. It was being taught, as you see a taught one down below in the line of Yochanan, Lamudim. It is a taught one. It is his taught one. He's teaching them these things. Okay. So Yahuwah spoke it to Moshe, and it says in Devarim, which Yahuwah commanded at Moshe. The mark of the accusative is here on Moshe. So this is something important. Moshe, his name means drawn, and the one drawn down below in Yochanan is seen as his Lamodim. This is Yahushua. He is the mark of the accusative, the Aleph and the Tau. He is the important one, and he has taught his taught ones as commanded. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak thus to the Leviim, to the ones joined to him, and say to them, these are the words of the Berit, the covenant between Elohim and man." This is what a Berit is. An agreement with signs and pledges of allegiance. An alliance. The verb means to create, shape, or form new conditions and circumstances. Transformations. It is always used with Elohim as the subject. He brings all those things to pass so as to preserve his people. Okay? Which Yahuwah commanded Moshe. The mark of the accusative, as I mentioned, is on him to make with Bnei Yisrael. The mark of the accusative is on Bnei Yisrael. Okay? If you believe Elohim will prevail, then everlasting life is yours. If you build upon it, holding fast to the covenant. This is the understanding of the terminology. Okay? This is seen as Yehuda, Ishkiryah, Shimon's ben. Okay? The praise of Yahuwah is heard in the Berit, in the covenant, along with Shimon. Both those names are of Ibrit origin. Shimon, his name means heard. The verb is Shema. H8085 means to hear, listen, and obey. The building of it, the ben. The mark of the accusative, as I mentioned, is on Bnei Yisrael. Everlasting life is in the praise of Yahuwah and hearing the covenant, the Berit, and obeying it. Okay? The one joined to it is Ishkiryah, who would betray him. Okay? Who would betray him? As I mentioned, him here is Yahushua. He is the Aleph Tau Moshe in the verse. Okay? He's going to betray him because of what's going on in the land of Moab. What's going on in the land of Moab? Moab means of his father, H4124. So we see Ishkiryah here. Ishkiryah, we look at this word here, is G2469. It's the problem here. It's in the land of Moab. Okay? Both Shimon, as I mentioned, and Yehuda are of Ibrit origin. This one here is not. This word here, Ishkiryah, is made up of two words. One is Ibrit, this word Ish. Okay? Aleph Wa Shin here. It is H377. So this word here, Ish, is a champion, a great man. This is a spiritual man. Okay? Okay, when you follow the verb here, the forms lead you to Enosh at the root. This is something weak, sick, and frail. It's incurable, desperately wicked, and woeful. So this can be seen in the second word of Ishkiryah. It is H7149. It is Kiryah. This word is Aramaic. It's an Aramaic word for city. So we're talking about Aramaic men in the city. The verb is used collectively in the sense of building. So the building is not of Ibrit origin. They are not building on the covenant in Devarim from the line above. The verb means to come, to meet, and to encounter. So this is an Aramaic dude, and this guy is trouble, because he's going to follow the Aramaics in the city, written in Devarim as Moab, his father. And he comes to this encounter with the praise of Yahuwah, and this unexpected experience begins to unfold, and he feels like he has better knowledge of what's going on. Aramaics, they are today's messianic believers. When you take from Bnei Yisrael the tent which I have given you from them as your inheritance, then you shall offer up a teruma of it to Yahuwah, a tenth of the tent. Besides the berit which he made with them in Horeb. So he speaks and says, why has this fragrant oil, why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? Okay. So this guy's out to spoil a celebration here now. When you take from Bnei Yisrael, those who believe Elohim will prevail, the Esser, the tenth, the mark of the accusative is here on the 10th. Etha Ma'esser. The mark of the accusative is there. It's the tithe as we know it, or most know it. The word is dealing with richness. It means to become rich or wealthy, to enrich, to pretend to be rich. So Yahushua is pretending pretty good. He's getting his feet anointed by Miriam as a sign of the richness of the territory he will inherit to walk upon in the life everlasting. So there's a lot going on here. He's going down to the Pesach as well. But this teruma is being lifted up for this thing with the blind man. This was a small portion or a token of that, a tenth. He was pretending to be rich, and because of that, this conversation is playing out by someone who has joined himself to Yahushua as a taught one, a Lamudi, who now has all this knowledge given to him by Yahushua and begins to hate on him. Yehuda Ishkaryah, Shimon's ben, begins to speak out about the money. Remember, the Levayim were hired killers. And whenever the tithe is mentioned, Gentiles are being marked out for judgment. They're after the money. This is the pattern that's being established. Whenever the Levayim are not mentioned with the tenth in Bamidbar, these are the good ones. Notice in the verse, as it lines up to tell the story about the will of Yahuwah. So anyone collecting a tenth or a tithe from the people as they relate to Scripture is always going to be lying to you about everlasting life in a way that will destroy you spiritually. So you'll notice it in the words. It's spiritual. Just as this guy is doing down below in Yochanan, he begins to talk about the money. What happened to it? As if he didn't get his cut or something. So he interested in the money. The richness of everlasting life is being given to Yahushua. And Yahuwah confirms this in Bamidbar. Yahuwah says, which I have given you from them. Them here are all inclusive. The one seen in Devarim, this is the first them, as it reads, besides the berit, or covenant, which he made with them. The mark of the accusative is right there on them. In Horeb, this is a covenant of everlasting life, the promised land, if you will. Yahushua is going to walk in a place that is not of this world order, another land that earthly words cannot describe. The covenant was made in Horeb. It is a desert place. It is a place laid waste and desolate. This is another name for Mount Sinai, where Yahuwah Elohim gave the mitzvah to Moshe to give to Bnei Yisrael. The covenant itself is laid waste and desolate to this day. Very few people, if any, even recognize it, especially among those with the knowledge of Adonai Yahushua on their tongue. So these are desolate times that we live in, as it was then. The verb is used meaning to attack, smite, and slay, to fight. So the covenant is under attack down in Yochanan in the form of a question, concerning the richness. The mark of the accusative is on it. As it reads, which I have given you from them. This is the current Bnei Yisrael down in Yochanan. It's the other them there. They're them too, questioning what Yahuwah says, which I have given you, Yahushua, from them as your inheritance. This inheritance is seen as the fragrant oil, which was used for anointing the feet of Yahushua and the things that led up to it, and why it was not sold for 300 denarii. The word for denarii here, G1220, is denarion. It is Latin for containing 10. This is Esser from the line above, the tenth or the tithe. This is the part that reads, then you shall offer up a teruma of it. A teruma of it, the tenth, to Yahuwah. This teruma is the contribution, this offering of any offering to Yahuwah Elohim. It's contribution. It, here in the verse, is the Esser, the tenth, as most know it. It is seen exalted. There is a contribution to it. Down in Yochanan, 300 of them, heaved up there as a contribution. And then there's a footnote. So let's look at what the footnote is. Footnote declares about 1 year's wages for a worker. More contribution here. A tenth of the tenth. This is seen in the line as given to the poor, those in need. Yeah. So Yahuwah says to Bamidbar, or in Bamidbar, then you shall offer a teruma of it to Yahuwah, a tenth of the tenth. So I'm them too. So I'm going to do what's called a teruma, or another contribution to Yahuwah for our time. So right off the bat, this was Yahushua's inheritance. What they were doing was for him, because the word of Yahuwah Elohim said it was the tenth or richness, which I have given you, Yahushua, from them as your inheritance. It was Yahushua's inheritance from Yahuwah. He just raised a dead man who had been dead, who he had raised from the dead. To quote that omitted phrase from the prior screen, a celebratory supper and a gift to Yahushua for helping them see what only Yahuwah Elohim can do. That's the least they can do to say thank you. Todah praise Yah, something. He just made a dead man come to life. And it was the talk of the town, and everything was done according to the covenant of Yahuwah, written in the Torah. Praise Yahuwah. Some type of teruma to that level, but no, not these Aramaics, these Messianics. They identify with the Hebrew or the Hebrew right up to the moment of truth. Then they tell you about Hashem and what he did with Jesus and Yeshua. They talk about somebody else, because Yahuwah Elohim did the things written here with Yahushua and Azar, and it lined up in his words for us to see it. Something else they cannot do. They can't line it up. Now, concerning the tent of the tent, in this footnote, it's just some more knowledge they add to the richness of what Yahuwah has done. About a year's wages for a worker. I don't care if it was 2 or 3 years worth of wages. Everlasting life is not for sale. Can't put a price on it any more than you can lie to get there. Somebody need to let the Pope know that so these Christians can get it right. They don't even know who Yahushua is. And how do you know it was 300 denarii for a year's wages for a worker? What job did they have? The best part of the tent is not even given to the poor, and this is evident because they don't even know his name. It's because of Ashkiyah, wicked men in the city. That's what happened there. Praise Yahuwah. The nerve of some people. After all he did, and they're trying to spoil the party. These people here got it bad. There's a lot going on in Mitsrayim. If y'all don't know by now, that's Egypt, the one who orchestrated this peace agreement that's going on now. It's falling apart at the seams, and some things going on behind the scene that you might not know. Stay tuned. If you have not already, get as far away from Christianity as you can. Okay? Till next time, Shabbat Shalom. Lahitro.